My dear student, welcome again in our normal Elimika program. It's Biology Form 5, and we have our concluding part on the topic, digestion in mammals. My name is Fortunato Schiobia. You're welcome. Well, my students, you can remember in our last session, in our last discussion, we had a discussion about digestion in intestines. You can remember the types of intestines that we have. That is large intestine, which is solely for absorption of water from undigested wastes, as well as temporary storage of the end products of, undigested waste materials. But also we saw that the small intestines is divided into two parts. That is the duodenum, which is a part next to stomach, which is separated from the stomach by a ring of muscles or a valve called pyloric sphincter. But also, we had the small intestines, an ileum, which is principally an absorptive and a digestive part. In the duodenum, what are the digestive agents and what are their sources? You can remember that the duodenum receives its digestive agents, digestive juices, from two accessory structures. The bile, which is part of a liver, which, the gallbladder, which is the part of the liver, which releases bile, a greenish chemical substance, which is chemically composed of two components. That is the bile salts and mineral salts. Bile salts including potassium and the sodium glycochlorate and the tauochlorate, which are important in the emulsification of fats, breaking down of larger fat or oil droplets into small ones for easy digestion by lipase enzyme. But also, the mineral salts, these include sodium bicarbonate, which give the bile its alkaline nature. Another digestive juice, that is the pancreatic juice, released by the pancreas. Chemically, this pancreatic juice comprises of pancreatic amylase, which continues the hydrolysis of starch into maltose. But also, it contains sodium bicarbonate, a mineral salt, to give its alkaline nature. There are proteases, including chymotrypsin and the chymotrypsinogen, which are inactive forms of trypsin and trypsinogen. My dear student, the ileum has its digestive juice called intestinal juice or succus entericus. But also this contains different enzymes, the proteases, it contains amylase, it contains carbohydrates, and it is in this region where the process of digestion ends. And therefore, the end products of digestion are absorbed by the ileum into the bloodstream, taken by the hepatic portovein to the liver, which is acting as a checkpoint before these food materials are distributed into various parts of the body. But also we saw that the large intestines receives the undigested wastes because of their rhythmical movements, there is absorption of water. And the slower the movements, the larger will be the amount of water taken from these wastes back into the body. And therefore, the semi-dry will be the fecal matter. And this may result into constipation. But the faster the movements, the faster the rhythmical movements of the large intestines results into only a small amount of water taken out of this fecal matter. And as a consequence, this comes out in a semi-liquid situation. And this may lead or may be described as diarrhea. Now, having seen that, having revised our last discussion, let us now go to the causes of digestive juices along the alimentary canal. Of course, the secretion of the digestive juices is due to stimulus or sensation of food. But this secretion is controlled by two systems. I mean, partly it is controlled by the nerves, but also it is controlled by the hormones. Now we have hormonal and the nervous control of secretion of digestive juices. That is sensory or hormonal control of we have the sensory or hormonal control of the secretion of the digestive juices. Now, the bulk of the digestive juices are released when there is a digestive role to play. Majority of the digestive juices are released from their respective glands when there is a digestive role to play. And this, the overall control of the secretion of these digestive juices depends on nervous system, but also it depends on endocrine system, that is, the hormonal systems. And these digestive juices, as we saw, are one, we have saliva, but also we have gastric juice. The third one, we have intestinal juice. But also we have pancreatic juice. And we have bile. Saliva, this is secreted by the salivary glands in the buccal cavity. Gastric juice, secreted by the gastric glands located in the gastric mucosa or walls of the stomach. The intestinal juice, this is released by the intestinal mucosa, the glands found in the intestinal mucosa, such as the crypts of Lebercon, the Brunner's glands of the intestines. Pancreatic juice, as we have seen shortly, This is released by the pancreas, and the bile comes from the gallbladder. Now to start with, let us start with saliva. Well, my dear student, as I have said, that the saliva, this is secreted by the salivary glands. It is secreted by the salivary glands in the buccal cavity. And the release of this saliva is controlled by two reflex actions. It is controlled by two reflex actions. The first one, this is simple and conditioned. Simple and conditioned. Reflex action. Well, from your Form 3 knowledge, can you remember what a reflex action is? What is a reflex action? Well, of course, this is an action which occurs involuntarily. It is an action which occurs without prior thought or planning. That is what we mean. That is how we can simply define what a reflex action is. Now, this simple and conditioned reflex occurs when the food is in the buccal cavity. The contact of this food with the taste buds contact of the food with the taste buds of the tongue will stimulate receptors sensitive to, we have various tastes that can be detected by the tongue. These receptors are sensitive to sweet. We have bitter. We have sour. We have salty. And another type of taste is called, that is umami. Umami, this is a meat taste. Now, after these receptors, after these receptors have been stimulated, well, we have sensory neurons will carry the impulses from these receptors to the brain. And then from the brain, a motor neuron carries the impulses to the effectors, that is salivary glands, which respond by releasing saliva. That is, we have the food in the buccal cavity. Its contact with the taste buds will stimulate receptors sensitive to sweet, bitter, sour, salty, or meat tastes. And after these receptors have been stimulated, the sensory neuron will carry the impulses to the brain. From the brain, then the motor neuron will fire the impulses to the effectors, the salivary glands, which in return will respond by releasing saliva. That is how a simple and conditioned reflex occurs. The second one, as far as secretion of the saliva is concerned is conditioned we have conditioned reflex action. Well, this conditioned reflex action, this occurs due to seeing. It may be smelling, or even thought of the food. It may be due to seeing, smelling, or thinking of the food. Now, when we talk of a conditioned reflex action, this is an action. Of course, it is an involuntary action, but it is due to learning. It is due to learning. Now, because of the seeing or smelling or thinking of the food, the salivary glands are stimulated to release saliva. An example of a reflex action, you can remember the experiment which was carried out by Ian Pavlov. By using his dogs, where he used to ring the bell and then provide the food. After ringing the bell, the food was provided to the dogs. Now, the dogs, through experience, came to learn that as soon as the bell goes, then there is food being provided. And therefore, following ringing of the bell, the dogs started to salivate. They learned that when the bell goes, the food is coming. So salivation came automatically. That is how conditioned reflex action occurs to cause the release of saliva. The second digestive juice, this is gastric juice. You remember, the gastric juice is secreted by the gastric glands that are located in the gastric mucosa, I mean the walls of the stomach. And this secretion of gastric juice involves 3 phases. And these include, we have what we call nevus, or call it cephalic phase. The second one, we have gastric phase. And the third one is intestinal phase. Now, to start with, let us see the nevus phase. Nevus phase or cephalic phase. Of course, a phase that is controlled by the brain. Now, the presence of the food in the buccal cavity and its subsequent swallowing will trigger the reflex nerve which pass along the vagus nerves from the brain to the stomach. Presence of the food in the buccal cavity and its swallowing will trigger reflex nerve impulse that pass along the vagus nerves from the brain to the stomach. So we have food in buccal cavity, then this triggering reflex nerve impulse, and this reflex nerve impulse is carried by the vagus nerves from the brain to stomach. Now, in the stomach, the walls of the stomach which contain gastric glands will respond by releasing gastric juice. And you can see that the release of this gastric juice occurs even before the food is reached the stomach. It is the presence of the food in the buccal cavity which will trigger the release of this gastric juice. And therefore, in this way, it is a phase that prepares the stomach to receive the food. Apart from nervous or cephalic phase, we have the gastric phase. The phase that leads, occurs in the stomach. This occurs in the stomach, and it involves both hormonal and nervous. It involves both hormonal, nervous control. Now, stretching of the food, stretching of the stomach due to presence of food will stimulate the stretch receptors in the stomach wall. Stretching of the food, stretching of the stomach due to presence of food stimulate stretch receptors. This will stimulate the stretch receptors and that are present in the stomach wall. So, the stretch receptors send the impulses to the Meissner's plexus, to Meissner's plexus, which in turn send the message or nerve impulse to the gastric glands. These send the impulses to gastric glands that respond by releasing gastric juice. Now, the presence of the food in the stomach also triggers the release of gastrin. This is a hormone which again stimulates the release of gastric juice from the gastric glands. Now, that is the second phase of gastric juice release. We have said that we have the nervous or cephalic phase, we have the gastric phase, and then we have the intestinal phase. And the intestinal phase, this occurs in the small intestines. We saw that acidified chyme from the stomach, that is, digestion in the stomach involves both physical and chemical processes. Now, a combination of these two, together with movement of the stomach walls, churning action, will pound the food into a creamy paste. This is called a chyme. Now, because of the presence of hydrochloric acid, this chyme is acidified. Now, when this acidified chyme enters the duodenum, it will trigger nervous and hormonal responses. And these responses that pass through the brain will inhibit the release of chyme into the duodenum. In this way, it is controlling the rate at which this chyme, the food paste, is moving from the stomach into the duodenum, into the small intestine, so to speak. But also, the duodenal mucosa is stimulated. The duodenal mucosa is stimulated to release two hormones. One, there is a release of a hormone called the secretin, whose role is to control or to stimulate the release of bicarbonate salts into the enzymes in the duodenum. But also there is another hormone called the cholecytokinin pancreozymin. This is called the cholecytokinin or pancreozymin. And these two hormones are directed either to the stomach or to the gallbladder and in the pancreas. The two hormones are directed to the stomach, pancreas, and gallbladder. Now, in the stomach, this secretin inhibits the secretion of gastric juice, while cholecytokinin inhibits stomach emptying. In the stomach, this secretin inhibits the secretion of gastric juice, and therefore the secretion of gastric juice enhances hydrochloric acid, while cholecytokinin or pancreomycin, this inhibits a stomach emptying. The rate at which this stomach is releasing the stomach is releasing the chyme into the duodenum. Well, my dear student, having seen these two digestive juices, the stomach, the saliva, and the way it is hormonally and nervously induced to be released, but also we have seen the gastric juice. In case of any query, in case of any question, please, you may either send a short message or simply a normal SMS, or you can use a WhatsApp message or you can record your voice note asking your question, raising your concern, giving out your query, or other criticism, or you can record your video asking a question, giving advice, or whatever query, and then fire your message, send your message in the phone number 0769 04 85 94. I repeat, 0769 04 85 94. Please use the messages and the videos and voice notes as I have instructed. The number is not for calling. Now, let us break shortly. We will be right back in a few seconds to come. So please, don't go away.